do you really want to just get through this? Or, I can help you live today and live the way you want to and show up the way you want to, or even maybe get through this adverse time even better than you could have imagined. And I remember offering that to you, you being like, huh? What? All right, welcome back to the Dr. Crockett Show. I'm your host, Dr. Susan Crockett. I'm so excited for you to be joining us today. This is actually part 2 of 2, the series I'm doing with my personal life coach, Paige Bowman. Yeah. Welcome back, Paige.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into our topic. Those of you that haven't seen the first episode, we just finished talking about how to love the color orange. And that sounds kind of silly, but it was actually kind of a deep conversation.
It was a great conversation.
It's a great conversation. So that's the previous episode to hear. We'll link that in the links below. But coming out of that conversation, we kind of got into the next step of this, which you and I did in my personal coaching sessions. I want to remind those of you who haven't seen the prior episode, just introduction. Paige has been my life coach and fellow certified life coach. We certified together 4 years ago, but she has been my personal life coach for the past 4 years. So we're taking our conversations and sharing them with you a little bit.
Yeah. So kind of you.
It's kind of scary. It's like, show you my scariness. Okay. You're right. It's kind of, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Paige. So Paige helps me to become aware of my thoughts, and then I make decisions about how I want to think about things. And then the next step beyond that is how we handle our thoughts in transformative energies. So sometimes we do transformations just because we have an idea that we want to grow into a better version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And we call that our virtuoso selves, right? Because it's the best version of ourselves. And sometimes that just happens because we're naturally curious and growing and reading books like Deep Work, which is behind you. We talk about that book all the time. But sometimes some of our biggest growth happens not because we're intentionally trying to do it, but when we hit adversity.
When life happens.
When life happens. Right? So I'm just curious, in your coaching practice, what percentage do you think you're doing coaching on? Is it more people who are just wanting to learn and grow, or are you doing more coaching on people growing through the adverse events?
I think for the most part, it's probably because I do weight loss, like we talked about in the last episode, in emotional eating. And I think that for the most part, when my clients come to me that want to lose weight and they want to do the work of no longer emotional eating anymore to make themselves feel better, it's because they started or more heavily used food through an adverse event. So they came to me because they've gained weight, or they find themselves using food way more often than ever before, and because of something that's happened in their life. And so, yeah, I think that, I have an episode of my podcast talking about, when life gets hard, and that happens. In the last episode, we talked about how, the pandemic just threw timelines off, and it feels like it's been 2 years and also 10 years. So yeah, I think a lot of the times, maybe I'm not coaching on adverse situations, but I'm helping people who have worked through that or are working through that, work on, transforming, but also their relationship with food.
Right. So remind our listeners where they can listen to your podcast.
So they can go to anywhere they listen to podcasts. It's called Weight Loss for Life Coaches. I do focus on helping life coaches, but I tell anyone who wants to listen to it that they're going to get so much out of it, even if they're not a life coach.
Yeah, it's a great podcast.
Thank you.
It's cool. So I wanted to talk about me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, put me in the hot seat again. I have this story of this huge transformation that happened while I was working with you in the last couple of years. So I used to have a really not healthy relationship with money. In fact, episode 3 of the show is a conversation that I have with my financial advisor, Hugh Hale, and we'll put those links in the episode notes below also. And that was about, the full story of the evolution of my emotional changes around money. So I don't want to rehash that whole thing today. But basically, I went from not being able to look at money at all to now having it be like the color orange. It's a neutralized thing that I'm just able to look at and deal with without a lot of negative thought or shame or, spinning having to do with it. And I wanted to talk specifically with you about how you helped me take that through the process and do the work, because it happened during the course of what we would normally think of as a very adverse event, which was a divorce that took almost 3 years.
Yep. Yeah.
So do you remember what that was like what I was like at the beginning of that process, and then how you helped me work on my brain and my mind as we went through that adversity?
Well, I think one of the main things that I remember from when that started happening is you said this sentence, and that's what's beautiful about our relationship is, as we continue to work together, and this is any relationship, right? You just grow in your trust of that person. And you said something to me that I pointed out to you because I am your life coach. And you said, I want to just get through this time.
Yep.
As one expects, right? Yes, hunker down is a hard time. I think a lot of us thought that way about the pandemic, let's just get through this. Well, I pointed that thought out to you. I said, do you really want to just get through this? Or, I can help you live today and live the way you want to and show up the way you want to, or even maybe get through this adverse time even better than you could have imagined. And I remember offering that to you, you being like, huh? What?
Because, one of the hardest things about that process was the finish line kept getting moved. I thought it was originally going to be 60 days, and then it turned into 6 months, and then a year, and then 2 years, and then almost 2.5 years. So the not knowing where the light, I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel, we would get through it, but constantly having my life on hold and then not knowing when the finish line was a very difficult position to be in. And when you said to me, you could actually be enjoying your life right now, and you could actually be thriving because you're going through this, that was startling to me. That was stunning. That was a aha moment, right?
Yes. Which actually takes us back to the last video, questioning this belief, right? Not liking the color orange, questioning this belief that I have to hunker down and get through this time. And what I offer to you is, would you be willing to live through this time, not just get through it? And of course, because of who you are, you were like, all right,
come on,
help me. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. And we did. And so you met with me weekly. Well, we've been meeting almost weekly since, we went through certification together 4 years ago. And the interesting thing was I had to go through a very, very detailed inventory of my finances. I had to look at them. And as we were doing that, I worked on changing my mindset. And now the gift of it is I've become a kick-ass businesswoman.
Yes, you have.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
And money no longer has that shame or that guilt or that power over me. And that's a huge thing. So I think that's a big benefit of life coaching. And, it's a different thing to think of an adverse event as being something that vaults you up into the next level of yourself. But it was like a catapult up into the next level.
Yeah. And, just as you were talking and thinking about, we have options. That's the way I like to think about it.
I love that.
Right?
We have options.
We have options when an adverse event happens. It doesn't have to be automatic that you do hunker down and you just try to get through it. The way I think about it, and that's why I offer that to you, is you could hunker down and get through it. You could actually end up better on the other side of that. Or a third option is worse if if we want to really put them all on the table.
Yeah.
But thinking about it, there are options. You have options here. It doesn't have to be that you just hunker down and get through it. It could be something that you come out on the other side and are now an amazing businesswoman, CEO, and now helping people transform their lives.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Paige.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the show is about, right? because we believe that as we transform ourselves, we transform the world around us.
Right.
So recently, you and I have been working more on how we change habits. So the habit that I had of thinking I couldn't handle money or that it was shameful or all of that got thrust upon me. And I did the work. I'm going to own that. And then I did the work on it. But a lot of times as we're going through life, especially you mentioned your weight loss clients, they're looking to change habits. We're looking to change habits that are ingrained in us and rewire our neural pathways. And one of the things I'm really interested in is our neuroplasticity, which means our ability to change our nervous system and our pathways in our brain. And that was something we only thought could happen until about age 23, until very recently, like the last decade or so. We started learning that even in geriatric age groups, the concept of neuroplasticity, I love that word, neuroplasticity exists. It's like Play-Doh. And so sometimes what I think you're doing with my brain is helping me rewire those habits. And so talk a little bit more about what you do to help people with those changes and how you and I have worked to change habits too.
Yeah, well, one thing that I like to explain, and I know we've talked about this, is instead of trying to just stop an old habit, I know there are habit books out there. I think James Clear and Charles Duhigg are one of the top 2 authors I'd recommend. But the idea of stopping a habit is actually, it's hard. The habit gurus say it's hard.
Or it wouldn't be a habit, right?
Right. So one thing that I recommend and that we've been talking about is creating a new habit instead to replace the old one. And there's someone that told me this metaphor, so it's not mine. I'm not claiming it, but it's like a railroad train going down the track is hard to just stop. I mean, it'll just come crashing. And instead, creating a new train track and starting up a new train. So something that we've been talking about is, for example, with my clients who are wanting to work out more or find joy outside of food, desire outside of food is a big topic I talk about, is if they're coming home and they're getting off of work and they just come and sit down and watch TV, flop on the couch, and so they don't do their workouts and not really enjoying the night, and a lot of times have food with them. Instead of trying to break that habit and stop doing that, we might create a new habit. And so we've talked about like the cold plunge.
Yes, and which I recently started doing because what's his name? Huberman and Andrew Huberman. Mm-hmm. So I was listening to his podcast about how it helps inflammation and also dopamine and serotonin. So go listen to his podcast on that. I'll put the link below. I actually started doing it 3 weeks ago. Life-changing. And so now as I'm finishing at work, surgery in the afternoon, instead of thinking about coming home and what I'm going to eat, like mashed potatoes and plopping down on the couch, they're vegan. Potatoes are still vegan. Now my brain is already anticipating how I'm going to go through the steps to get to the plunge, they call it the fire and ice room. Oh, there's also a massage chair there and everything. But there's this great place called Evolve, the Human Lab, that's close to me. And it's just amazing. So that's been one thing that I've done to change the habit in my life. The other is behind you. If you look on the shelves behind you, all those books that they're not even opened yet. So we had a conversation about how I hadn't read a fiction book or just read for pleasure. Like I love reading nonfiction. I just devour information and YouTube videos on, self-help and science and everything. But I used to really love fiction as a kid, and I just hadn't been reading for a long time. And I don't mean reading like the internet, and because I'm a speed reader for medical journals and stuff, I can get through them real quick. But for enjoyment, I hadn't. So these are books you and I talked about that you actually recommended to me for fun. So they're ordered. They've been delivered. Now I have to start actually coming home after my cold plunge. Yeah, they're waiting to be read.
Well, what I love about your example, like cold plunge, so what you've done is you've created a new train track. instead of trying to get yourself to stop eating or stop plopping on the couch when you get home, you've created a new habit of, well, actually, when I leave work, I go and I do my fire and ice. And she says she loves it. And I had to laugh because I've done it and I can't say that I love it. So I love that for you. Give it a try for sure. But your new train track, your new habit is to go to do the fire and ice and do the cold plunge. And then thinking about like, what do you want to do when you come home, and you're creating this new habit, and just being creative and thinking outside of the box, and even going back to our last episode of questioning what you think is the things that you do to find joy, and questioning those. And is that true? And what else could you be doing? And so you're such a great example of being open to new things and seeing old habits that aren't really getting
Serving you.
Right, serving you, getting the results that you want, and trying new things instead.
Yeah, well, I think it's fun. I think one of the keys to longevity and living better as we age, which is another big topic that I love. I want to live to be 120. And I don't mean just like in a, decrepit condition. I want to be active and healthy and vibrant and having life and relationships as long as I can. So I'm kind of a junkie on the longevity stuff, but I forgot where I was going. What was I saying? I completely forgot what I was saying. Anyway, one of the keys to that is always being curious, right? Mm-hmm. And always being willing to grow. That's actually this one. It's the light blue color is grow. So it goes B, which is self-care, heal. B, heal, love, give, grow, pray, and attune. So B is self-care, which is the plunge. Mm-hmm. The healing is fixing the things that are wrong. Love is love. Give is service and also money. But the grow part, we don't talk about very much, or we haven't yet on the show very much. And I think that's kind of where this topic is falling into, because growth, in order for us to grow, we have to have the idea that there's something beyond where we are right now, and we want to continue to transform and become our better versions of ourselves. And that curiosity and that willingness to try something new, the TSN is when I say try something new.
Oh, I love that.
Every day, it's kind of a little thing.
Yeah.
TSN. That is a really important part of aging well. And I'm not just talking about middle age and geriatrics. I think it begins with a mindset when we're younger, where we have something to look forward to and continue to challenge ourselves.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that it kind of goes back to you have options, and thinking about growth as an option and not necessarily something that it's for other people. It's for you too, no matter where you're at in your journey. And again, like, you're a great example of like, well, maybe I want to do something different in my afternoons. So maybe I will go do a cold plunge, and I've never done it. And now you've been doing it multiple times a week for weeks on end now.
Yeah.
But thinking of growth as like, it's an option for me, and maybe this is something that I want to do no matter where I'm at in my life, and it's possible for me too. I think it's an option and it's possible for me.
Yeah, it's not just for some people. It's not just for the lucky people. It's all of us. And it's something that's free. It doesn't require you to have a lot of wealth to learn something new. You pick up the TV and learn something new, and find a YouTube channel that you enjoy. Take a walk outside and notice what's around you, and be curious about the things in nature. Be curious about other people that you meet.
Yeah.
That curiosity, instead of having that they're the color orange and I don't like orange, ask yourself, well, what do they love about the color orange?
Yeah.
Be curious about that.
Yes. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Aw, thanks. Because you know what? I think we choose the paths that we decide to grow on, right? Sometimes they're thrust upon us like the adverse events, but even through the adverse events, we're choosing how we want to grow and which of the paths we want to take for growing through it. I had more choices than just the money path to grow.
Right.
Well, and that actually took more than just the money path in growing. There's a tremendous amount of other emotional growth that went through that adverse event. So what have you seen in your weight loss clients as you are in your other coaching clients in having those choices about growth or not?
Well, the reason why I say it's an option and it's possible is because I think sometimes we don't see it as an option, and that the adversity we're going through is a way to grow. And so that's even just helping my clients see that is kind of big for them, even if they intellectually know that when they're in their adverse event, kind of like you, it's like, oh, wait, you're right. This could be something I grow through, especially with weight loss and emotional eating. It's like, no, wait, this is actually the time I need food the most because food is the thing I use for comfort. And then realizing, no, wait, hang on, I can change my mindset around food while I'm growing through this. The thing I see the most is people feel like, especially my clients that do the work on feeling their emotions, they feel like they have more strength and they feel like they have the ability to go through more adverse situations in the future.
So they've built their capacity.
Exactly. They've grown so much in their ability to handle what comes because they decided to grow through this one.
That's a really great insight.
Yeah.
I think this has been a really important conversation for us to have. And I hope that our viewers will of course, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. But in particular with this episode, I hope that this is an episode that you save and that you come back to, that you share with others, because I think this is a really important conversation for people to remember that they saw, so that when they're going through the hard time, they have a place to come back to and relate on a different level with what's going on with this conversation about getting through those things.
Hear it again in a different way.
And use this as a reassurance for when they're going through those tough times.
Yeah.
Because we all go.
It's life.
It's always something.
It's always something.
Well, today it was a great conversation with you, Paige. Thank you again so much for coming and sharing yourself and your knowledge and everything on the show. And I just love you dearly.
Of course. I love you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.